Well, welcome everyone to the final panel of the day. Will our digital transformation love affair survive the post-pandemic? So big tech has made record profits during the pandemic. Microsoft, Google just reported $110 billion of revenue in the third quarter. That's a 30% increase on an already strong performance last year. Much of the profit was from cloud computing as the world went virtual. But today is a hybrid event. It's fabulous to be here in person, networking again. So has the pandemic changed business permanently? For the moment, companies are investing in digitalization efforts, but some CDOs worry that their senior leadership will curb such spending, curb such programs as the pandemic retreats. So what does the future look like? Well, we're fortunate today to have an all-star, all-female panel, and I'd like to invite my panelists up on stage. Can I invite Sandy Lau, Chief Growth Officer from Serai, to join me? Welcome, Sandy. Giuliana Auinger, Partner and Vice President, Sustainability Business Division Asia, Schneider Electric. Viola Lam, CEO and Founder, Fine Solutions AI Limited. Welcome, Viola. Nikita Mo, Industry Lead, Google Cloud Platform, Google. Welcome, Nikita. Sandy, if I could start with yourself. How can a good CDO prevent their program from being aborted midway?
I think first and foremost is really important actually before you kick off any sort of digital transformation or initiative is to set very clear strategic direction for why you're doing it and what is the business impact that you're expecting it to drive. And because the initial buy-in is very important so that it's very clear what the goals are, and it comes from leadership first, because leaders, it translates throughout the organization if you have that leadership buy-in and also advocating for that across the organization. And very few of these initiatives really only touch one team or one part of the organization. So although we talk about digital and technology a lot, it is very important that upfront you also engage the right people across the organization, because we can't ignore the processes and people where a lot of the impact is going to happen. So I think when you're upfront doing the planning and the strategic setting process, that's really important.
Viola, you have a look at the question from a slightly different angle. You're founder of your own business. Does that reflect your experience, or have you approached it slightly differently?
So for me, literally, I founded a AI company. Literally, we build algorithms, especially for adaptive learning systems, and also lately, because of COVID, we also build a video learning platform, which enable people to learn, and digital transformation as well. Because to be honest, most of my customers, because they're schools, so they're pretty laid back. So before COVID, they're like, oh, we don't need you. The door is there, exit is there. Something like that. They did say something like that. But the point is, after COVID or during COVID, we still didn't end it yet, right? They changed quite a lot. They say they fine tune, they ask for digital transformation. They're really pretty open mind, but not just regular using some of the video conferencing tools, but they want something else. But in order to avoid they stop the digital transformation, there's some I would say there's several takeaways for me. So literally, you need to show them the core values when they adopt some new technologies. Most of the business people, they're cheap. Sorry, I'm one of them. But the core thing is you need to show them the values that, let's say, they have higher turnover in terms of revenue-wise, or in terms of the operation-wise, it's more smooth. And so that is the reason why, because when they start to build a habit on it, they cannot leave you. So that is the reason why literally when we launch Follow the Trees in our platform with schools, at first it's 90 schools. So this year we're expecting to have 150 schools in Hong Kong. And to be honest, in Hong Kong, if you're pushing a software, it's really hard compared to other Asian countries. They're conservative, they avoid walk, risk averse. So that is the core reason why. So if have to stay on course for digital transformation, you need to show the value and show them using it, you save more money in a better way. So this is how to maintain it in a good way.
So whereas Sandy speaks about building leaders or having the right leaders, you to some degree are having to build them from the ground up, turn them into leaders.
Yes.
Right. And Nikita, you work with your range of companies across Hong Kong, providing advisory around putting their business on the cloud effectively. What's some of your learnings to try and help companies manage their digital journey and not give up?
Thank you. I think it's very important that whatever digital initiative you have in mind, always align it to the key business objectives of the company. So the key business objective can be, I want to increase the revenue for X amount, or improve the operational efficiency or reduce costs. That's very important. It's non-trivial. And I'll give you one example. A lot of companies nowadays, they say that we are building a data lake. And also a lot of companies, if you talk to them, you realize that even they have a data lake, they still cannot solve their business problem. So always work from what is the business problem you want to solve? What is the data needed, for example, to solve that problem? So instead of building a massive data lake, you figure out what's the business problem, find the data you need to solve the problem. So it's more effective to show the result. Secondly, it's very important to qualify the initiatives. So when you know that you have key business objectives, you align the initiative below that, find out those and start with those that has most business impact, that you can show your leadership, you're really making progress. The third point is digital transformation always comes with cultural transformation, operational, and also organizational transformation. So it's very important in early on an organization, think about, is your team ready to make a change? Because that could mean introducing new operational procedures, even restructuring. Is your organization ready for that? Does your people have the right skill set? If you know, are you ready to train them, invest resources to train them, or find someone else externally? Thirdly, it's more cultural perspective. Does your people have the right mindset to change? Some people may think that I don't want to change at all. So how do you cultivate a more willing to change? How do you bring your team along? That's very important. Thank you.
Viola, I saw you nodding there when the word culture was mentioned. You had a strong response. What are your thoughts?
Depends on what kind of buyers that you have. Teacher, they are the most difficult one, I would say. Sorry, I used to be an educator as well, so shouldn't say on behalf of in that area. But the core thing is, because even though if you have a very good software, you have a very good team, but you always have to come along to teach the operating guys, they need to adopt it. It's really difficult. Especially they always believe that you're putting a new tech in it, is it monitoring them? Yeah, so that part is really difficult. So I think companies like this, they can start with some small pilot. Let's say, because using tech, so you don't need to work that hard. Less report, less meeting, something like that. Bring them some incentive. Then they see the benefit from it, and then it's way better. So for teacher-wise, my industry is really tough.
Giuliana, you approached the question quite differently from a sustainability angle, and that's very relevant with COP26 due to start Sunday, I think. Pandemic or no pandemic, the climate crisis matters. We need to digitize to deal with it. But digitization is not easy. How do you sustain initiatives?
So I agree with everything my fellow panelists have talked about. I want to acknowledge that first. I think leadership and C-level engagement is key. Getting the right culture and people on the ground to buy in is key. Having a business case is key. I used to be a business strategist, a corporate strategist in my previous life before I entered sustainability. And I'm going to add another layer to that, and that's purpose. right? So I think that is also key to driving any kind of digital transformation for any organization. And, I'm now at Schneider Electric. We have put sustainability at the core of our purpose. So every single product, solution, software that we provide and create going forward will have efficiency and sustainability in the center of what it does. And that is a strategy that our company has started 15 years ago. And so sustainability is not just a marketing purpose or it's not for the purpose of marketing, but it's really core to the DNA of the company. It's a 15 years journey, and part of being a sustainable company, we also appreciate that we have to go through digital transformation ourselves. And so my point of view is that, purpose is really the key driver in any organization. And in our case, we find it the perfect marriage between sustainability and digitization, because it's not possible for any organization to sustain these days without strong digital capabilities, no matter what you do. And so that's kind of where we're coming from.
And Schneider's on a 15-year journey now. I know Serai as well was already a digital leader prior to the pandemic. So I'm sure, Sandy, you've experienced your successes, but occasionally programs can fail. What is the best way to manage that, to manage expectations and to keep the momentum alive?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think a day-to-day challenge for us, because we started off, we started 3 years ago. So we start in the digital age, I guess you could say. So we have, I think first and foremost is actually building a really strong culture in the organization in the first place, through your hiring, for you attracting your talent, and embracing that failures or things will not always go the way we expect anyways. So we need to actually be very agile, and that's how we operate at Serai. We take a very agile approach to everything that we do, not just tech or digital, even marketing. For example, with any of the projects and our even day-to-day rollouts, we take a very agile approach. We have very integrated teams that work together. We run them like sprints. So we actually have 2-week sprints, and then we do retros very consistently. So don't wait until months and months after rolling out a program or in the process of rolling out a program to then do a review and monitor. I mean, that's too late, because things are changing very quickly. And actually these little kind of small milestones and shorter, quicker reviews allow the team to regroup, because we're bound to miss out on things. And, no matter how big or small your organization, there's just things that you will overlook, or your assumptions will be wrong, because there's a lot of hypotheses actually that you pull into. And there's nothing wrong with hypotheses. It's actually just being very good at testing them very quickly, so you can re-engineer and adjust as need be. So I think for us at Serai, definitely the ways of working is something that we constantly and continue to review. We won't say we've got it perfect yet. But I think within the teams, we also have a culture of being very frank and feeling safe and secure to actually also offer feedback to each other when things are not going well, or whether the team is working well together, or are we making wrong decisions, and monitoring progress. I think one point like Ntika was making around quantifying those as well. I think having these milestones and having very quantifiable metrics that every person in the team can see, and being very transparent about it. So that will also help, I think, having the right data. So we're making decisions not on emotions, but on actually data.
Nikita, Sandy's picked up on your point around data. Can I ask you a similar question then around how do you manage expectations when results don't always come out the way you expect them to?
I think from this perspective, it is very important that you set the expectation right and realistic with all levels within your company. with your leadership, with your working team, set a realistic timeline, what you can achieve, and really also like, divide your journey into small milestones. What you can achieve in each milestone, show the progress, and also share the progress with your fellows within the company to make sure that they know what is going on and what kind of progress you are making. And also celebrate some successes. Celebrate each successes. That's very important. So I think from my perspective, one of the biggest barrier of innovation or like digital transformation is the fear of failure. So we need to try to remove the barrier. Like Sandy, what she mentioned is very important. I feel as a chief digital officer within a company, I feel they are almost like an ambassador to promote digital transformation and also create a very friendly environment for that, where to cultivate a culture that people feel comfortable to share new ideas, where new ideas are welcome, will be heard, and also like to make it fun. Transformation should be fun, should be exciting, and people are involved. And also very important to get different department or people involved, that they feel that they are owning part of it. They want to go this journey with you. That's very important. Thank you.
And Viola, how do you manage that journey? Because the education sector is tough. We're a sector that perhaps was not digitized, all of a sudden had to digitize at a remarkable rate as schools went online. You had teachers who were perhaps frustrated about having to teach online. You had parents, such as myself, who were frustrated having to guide their children to learn online. How do you manage expectations there?
I feel like lately you learn quite a lot because of all the online courses. I do believe it's the parents learning mostly because of that. So literally for us, it's like you guys have the model answer already. So I'm still thinking. Yeah, that's hard. So for me, let me talk a little bit on. Let's say if you really run on a project, and let's say really something goes wrong. So how to deal with it? Let me put it in this way, because everybody always have a goodwill when you start the project. But to be honest, every innovation, every transformation is like a revolution or like a research. You never know. You don't have a crystal ball in front of you. You're not the fortune teller telling you, hey, it's gonna be go, right? Nobody knows. But the point is, the process and the insight that come along with the flow, that is important. To be honest, at first, we work on an adaptive learning system. We always believe that people can learn anytime, they can do whatever they want, right? During COVID, yes, it works. But the point is, your customer, they want more. They change the expectation because they no longer can see that person face to face. They want more, right? So the expectation, they will change every time, every day. Every time then when they have a meeting, then they will say, how about this? How about that? And then whatever they tell you about, it changes every day. But the point, what I'm saying is the insight that they come along with, do you have a way in order to manage it and then put that insight into the future roadmap or in the R&D? So let's say if there's any failure, but sooner or later, it can come back on live because of that failure. So always come along, think of the insight and think of, is there a good way in order to work better than that? So this is how I work on it.
Thank you. And if we can move from the schoolroom to the factory floor, many of Schneider's products, while you're selling a digital solution, ultimately it's a piece of equipment that sits on a factory floor, is managed by factory managers and engineers who might not be especially digital. How do you bridge that gap?
That's a very, very tough question, Ben. You threw that one at me without I didn't see that one coming. Look, I think I'm gonna be a bit of a politician and change your question a little bit, because I actually spent 15 years as a management consultant. I spent my entire career advising large corporates on various topics, from corporate strategies to also digital strategies and digital transformations. And there's something I see in common in my management consulting times, as well as what I see now when we try to tackle the issues of sustainability. is that it's never the technology's problem. It's always the organization. And in sustainability, a good example, right? We don't want to put products into factories' floors for the sake of putting it there. There must be a purpose for it. But unfortunately, if we talk about climate action, for example, today everyone's talking about, going for net zero, et cetera, et cetera. And as I said before, sustainability and digital is tightly connected because you cannot measure and report out on something that you have to digitize it before you can measure and report out on anything. So anything we put in factories or in buildings, the purpose is to digitize, and there's always a broader reason behind it, whether it's sustainability objectives or adaptation type objectives for our corporate customers. But somehow that communication breaks down. And the people who might be responsible for installing the equipment and our technology solutions for buildings or factories to operate may not have the right communication channel with the people who decide on the business case, or vice versa, right? So either the business case gets decided, the purpose is clear, but the people who are doing it don't know why they're doing it. Or, someone in the board somewhere says, you know what, I want my building or my factory to be net zero, go and get it done. And then 1 year later, they say, oh, the program failed, right? That's because your facility managers or your engineers were not empowered to bypass some of the existing organizational barriers, like procurement rules or whatnot, to be able to get the right technology in there. So it's never the fact that there is no technology, or it's not the technology problem, but it really is the organization. So I think as leaders across organizations who really care about their purpose and are really trying to move forward on their digitized journey to be prepared for the future, so COVID or not, the future is inevitable. I think they need to be very mindful and really address head-on some of these organizational issues.
And Sandy, again, I can see you nodding there. Any real-world examples you might be able to offer up to participants to reflect on some of the comments we've made today? We've spoken a lot about strategy and purpose and leadership and embracing change, but it'd be great to hear from some more sort of practical, down-to-earth views of what actually happens.
I think in a very practical sense, there are lots of reasons why sometimes projects don't work, or it's moving along and hasn't actually had the chance to get to a point where there is fruition or there is results yet. And practical examples, I'm sure everyone has experienced some sort, whether it's management change, because there could be a directional decision, change in leadership. I mean, especially I've worked in larger corporations as well as startups, and that tend to happen more in the larger organizations. New people come in and they have just a new view of how they would want to run the business. That will have impact, and some of it is not really always within the project owner's control. I think with the COVID, for example, and when there are more global situations happening, definitely for a lot of businesses, that may not be a priority. I mean, for Serai, we're looking at helping companies to drive supply chain transparency, and we're helping some of these organizations actually to go through that transformation. And some of the questions, some of the kind of responses we've been hearing from some of our clients, whether they're manufacturers or they're retailers, is yes, it is important. They do want to be able to track and look at transparency across their organization and supply chains. But at this moment, with all that's happening with supply chain disruptions, it's not a priority. So I think there's the reality of business and more macro factors at play that sometimes does also impact these projects. As much as we talk about leadership and everything, you say textbook answers, but I think these are true. But I think that's what we're experiencing right now, where I think they do see that as a long-term. A lot of the companies we work with, they do see this as a long-term goal for them. But there's just a lot of other factors that need to be taken into consideration. And right now, it's the bottom line first. before they have the resources to do that. Especially some of the organizations are not huge global organizations with lots of ample resources. Their resources are being deployed to the same projects or even the day-to-day running of the business. So that's something as us, like as a technology provider, we also have to work with, and it's really important to understand our clients and see how then we can work together with them with a program that would actually work for them at that point in time.
Yeah, the bottom line, I would agree, it is important. It was, fascinating, just 12 months having these types of conversations with the supply chain. Many big global brands weren't sure if they'd still be in business in 12 months. And very difficult to digitize and focus in that type of situation. Giuliana, I'm interested, your perspective, having worked in management consultancy and now at a global leader in the business you do you feel Asia, I'm going to throw a curveball at you, do you feel Asia is lagging or leading these types of digitization efforts?
I think Asia is so different country by country. It's hard to generalize and say places we are lagging. I mean, obviously China or way ahead in terms of digitization initiatives. But it's also not consistent, right? Even in China. I mean, you have some players that are really moving ahead, but I don't have the exact percentage, but there's still a majority of, for example, manufacturers in China that are heavily manual and they're still doing business the same way. So I think, I'm going to give a very typical consultant answer, which is it depends. And sustainability, same thing, right? You have places like Singapore. You have some, a much larger NGO community that's driving sustainability in Asia. But then you still have governments that are reluctant to make a move, and you still have some heavy polluting industries here in Asia. So it's really a mix, I think, in terms of what we see both from digitization and sustainability perspective. Some places we're better, some places we're not.
Excellent. And Nikita, can I ask you that the move towards the cloud is obviously big business at the moment. Where do you see it going over the next sort of 12 months, 24 months as firms continue to digitize? What will drive that digitization process?
I think this very interesting question, I do see that actually COVID has accelerated the whole transition and also transformation moving to the cloud. And I think that the reason company moved to the cloud because they wanted to focus more on their core business. So instead of managing something very manual, they wanted to outsource that so that they can focus on that business. I feel that is actually what will be accelerating. And then the second question is, what does cloud enable companies to do? A lot of topic we already covered, data lake, how to have better data analytics, real-time analytics is a very key today. And also, for example, how do you use the data to enable AI machine learning to better do prediction, automation? That is some kind of topic that a lot of companies have in mind and they wanted to accelerate. And that is what cloud can provide. And I see a lot of companies embracing that.
And Viola, now that we're back to in-person schooling, we hope, fingers crossed, what does a leading school look like in terms of their digitization efforts? So we know there are laggards, but what does a leading school look like, and what's motivating them to continue that journey?
So for school, normally they're most laid back. Normally they started pretty late. Some of the school I even heard the very first 2 months for COVID when they strike, then say, it's just a common flu. We're gonna wait. So that school literally, it's a Hong Kong government school. I don't name them, but they literally wait almost 6 months in order to get it up for online. At first they do pre-recording. Oh God, yeah, you know it, right? Some of the leading school, they use a lot of video conferencing and stuff. But the point is, the teacher teaching, they have the biggest problem is they don't have the interaction part. So let's say today we're very lucky we have a physical part that we can do, you can chit chat, things like that, right? Imagine if you're a teacher teaching over 30 kids Everybody just have a little box, and if that person really there or not, you never know. Sometimes, let's say my son, I got two, so always the younger one is helping the brother sitting in the classroom, the virtual classroom, not the real one. God, so he learns a lot. But what I'm saying is, because of that, we change quite a lot as well. Some of the leading school, there's an association that we work very closely in Hong Kong. HKACE is a computer studies teachers. So they are the pioneer ones. They are almost the best IT teachers in Hong Kong. They're also struggling because in Hong Kong, normally, if you want to run a DSE mock exam, in the past, you can just book a hall, everybody join in, right? But now they cannot. So they find us to build a mock exam system online. So 90 schools, they can do the exam directly on the system. So we do adaptive learning, we see the emotions and everything. So that one we put in 4 little trees. Meanwhile, they also said, it's also very difficult to do not just a live, but they wanted to have interaction. They wanted to build it like a Netflix. So let's say if Viola is just not good in that area, I can just find the keyword, find the best way to learn. So it's more interactive for better learning. So the leading school now, they're working with me. We build a Chung, a video platform, literally find out what their strength, what their weakness. We schedule them, algorithm, put it at the back. All the video live, we fit it to them, especially to discuss what kind of exam, that pattern that they are struggling. So these are the 90 schools is going to be implemented within this year.
It's fabulous. Really impressed. Giuliana, again, I'm thinking about COP26 and sustainability, and that the climate battle is going to be a long and hard battle, and firms need to sustain their digitization efforts. What's your advice to your clients? What does a leading company look like?
So I would like to say that, Schneider Electric is a leading company when it comes to digitization and sustainability. But I think, there are some common characteristics of a leading company. I think the first is they're consistent, right? To my very first point around purpose, they obviously, we are a listed company. We have short-term goals as well. We have stakeholders, investors that we have to manage. But we are very consistent in terms of what we believe we need to do and the role of our business in the greater ecosystem, whether it's energy transition or digitization of cities. And just being consistent in everything we do. And you don't see us kind of change our minds or digress from our core purpose. So I think leaders tend to be consistent. The second characteristic, I think maybe touches a little bit on the previous panel, but they embrace partnerships and they embrace ecosystems. And, I'm starting a pretty new business division in Schneider, right? The sustainability business division. And our mission is to help our customers and suppliers accelerate on their sustainability journey, especially when it comes to climate action. And long story short, there's a humongous need for that. And we feel that it is also, we've been doing this ourselves for 15 years. It is also our role, and I guess part of our mission and purpose to share that knowledge with, external parties and companies who want to be part of it. But the last thing we want to do, and we want to create ecosystems and partners, but the last thing we want to do is to create competition and have competitive friction, because that doesn't help the world tackle the most pressing humanitarian crisis that we're facing. So, I think embracing partnerships and ecosystem is probably the second characteristic of some of the best-in-class companies that we have seen. Last but not least, I would say, well, this is a tough one. I probably need to think about it. Yeah, let me get back to you on that one then.
Embracing ecosystems as well as competition, I think, is fabulous. That's certainly a best-in-class way forward. The supply chain is certainly very much part of a larger ecosystem. Does that reflect your experience, Sandy? embracing ecosystems, and do you work closely with other parties?
Yes, definitely. And we believe in partnerships, and within the supply chain, it's a very actually complex, it's a very complex, parties are involved. There are data providers, there are also other platforms they're already using. What we really believe in is actually coming together to solve that problem, because it's not going to be one magic solution. So actually collaboration in the whole ecosystem is super critical, especially around supply chain transparency, visibility. How do we do that? Because no one owns that one data source or can have that one single holistic view. So which is kind of why our vision in terms of our platform is actually, we kind of consider it more of a collaboration platform, where actually different actors and players along the supply chain can actually contribute their data, their understanding, their supply chain mapping, their relationships, and bring that together. And hopefully the whole entire ecosystem can benefit from that. That of course includes all the partners that we can work with, whether they are NGOs, other organizations that are driving the same agenda. We really welcome actually working with more and more partners together to help try to solve that problem.
Super. Thank you very much. We've run out of time, but you've left me inspired that our digital journey will continue. It's not the end of the road post-pandemic. So I want to thank all our panelists today. A real pleasure. Much appreciated. Thank you, everyone.